This is a tutorial for RPG Maker Unite, the version of RPG Maker that came out in May 2023, and it's an asset for the editor for the game engine Unity. Once you have that asset installed, you can get to this RPG Maker view by going to Window, RPG Maker Mode, and then I'm looking at RPG Maker Focused Mode. You also have RPG Maker plus Unity Editor, which loads both modes at the same time. All right. So initially, you'll be taken to this title screen. On the far left here, you can see the database, which is where all the settings that make up your game are configured. That includes all your maps. In the center here, you've got the preview screen where you're looking at the title screen at the moment. And then on the right, you've got all the settings that relate to whatever you have selected on the left here. A couple things you may want to change under project settings when you create a new project. If you plan on moving your project from one folder to another, in order to ensure the metadata gets moved along with everything else, if you click this little pencil and then go to player settings at the bottom of the build settings window, that'll take you to your project settings. And then if you go to editor on the left, make sure asset serialization mode is set to force text. And then if you go to version control, in some versions, version control may be listed under editor. But in my version, it's a separate item here. So just make sure the version control mode is set to visible meta files. And that'll make sure all your metadata gets moved along with everything else. All right, so now to get into the maps. If you want to look at your maps, just expand map settings at the bottom of the database, and then expand map list, and then you'll see all the maps. And these are all the maps that came with the asset. There's a lot of them. Now, if you want to make a new map, you can right-click on map list, and you get two options. You can make a new map from a sample map, or you can make a new blank map. If you want to make a new map from a sample map, I recommend you expand the sample map first, because you don't get a preview of the sample map when you're selecting it from the new map screen. So if you just click on one of these maps, you can zoom in with your scroll wheel, and if you press and hold the middle button while dragging, you'll be able to move the map around. Once you've selected the map you want, right-click on map list, and then click New Map from Sample Map, and select your map. And then it'll take a minute for it to create the map, so we'll just wait here. All right, so it's done creating the map. So now let's say I want to change the floor in this entrance area to something else. To do that, we're going to look at the bottom here. There are a number of tabs that let you change the visual elements you can use to modify your map. These ones that are lettered are going to be your different tile groups. If you use previous versions of RPG Maker, these should look familiar. They work pretty much the same way. The only difference is instead of having a single file that includes all the tiles for each of these letters, every tile is its own image file. And so they have these tile groups that then have all the different tiles that would normally go together. So under A, if I click Load Tile Group, the tile group that has the floor is going to be A2, which is the same as what you would have seen in the previous versions. So we click OK. And then let's say I want this floor here in the middle. All right. And then let's say maybe I want these pillars in the entranceway here to be different as well. So now that's also under A, but it's not this tile group that I selected, A2. So now I have to load a different one. A4 has the wall pieces. And let's say I want this blue one here. And notice when I clicked on this one, it didn't remove the picture. That's because each one of these letters is its own layer. And so when I click on this, it's only going to modify what's on the layer I have selected, this A layer. So since this picture came from a different layer, it stays there. All right, and then you can also make a new map from nothing. If you just right click on map setting, map list, and click new map. Then we just wait while it creates the map. All right, and then I'll just call this test map. All right, now if you want your map to include a background or a parallax, you're going to want to set that up before you start building your map. So I'm going to add a background, load image, and I'll choose this forest. So the default size of the map is a 10 by 10 grid. So I'm going to say I still want the part of the map that I'm building to be a 10 by 10 grid, but I want this background to be visible on part of it as I'm walking around. So I need to make it a little bit bigger so there's room for this background to show through. So let's say I want 2 tiles on the top and 1 tile on either side, but I still want a usable space of 10 by 10. That means I need to make this a 12 by 12 grid. And as soon as I click out of that field, I have to wait for it to update the setting, which took a couple seconds. Okay, so now I have my 12 by 12 grid. Now, let's say I want to put a wall-like piece along the edge. There's one here that looks like trees under A4. So I'll use that one. And then I want it on the bottom as well. All right. And then I need a walkway in here somewhere, so I need to get rid of a couple of those. So I'll click on the eraser here to erase. Make sure I'm on the A tab because I can only erase tiles that were from A while I have A selected. And then I just erase a couple of these. Go back to the pencil, and then now I want to fill the rest of this in with grass. So I need a different tile group, A2, and then I'll click the cube and just make sure you start your selection from the tile underneath the one you want to start on. And make sure you click this little square last. So select your tile and then click the square. So now I want to go back to the pencil and just fill in these two. All right, now the next thing that I want is some stairs. So go to A4, sorry, A5. And I'll put a stair here and maybe one over here. And then I'll put this section here. And then maybe I want some of these little flowery grasses and some rocks in a couple of places. All right. Okay, so that's it for A. And then the only other thing that I'll do here is maybe put some shrubs here along the edge. So if I go to a B tile set, that's where you'll find the little trees. And then under outside B, there's some little trees. I'll just put those here. All right, and for the purposes of this demonstration, I think that's sufficient for a map. Now, previously, in my previous video, I had mentioned that you could save this as a background and use the background instead of these tiles. However, that won't work because the passage where you can walk is determined by which tile that you have put here. And so if you have a background, it's not going to be passable, and there's no way to change that without adding a tile. And so basically you can't use the background as your actual map. It can only be an actual background. And if you want to see how to edit the tile passability, I'll show that next. So if you want to edit where you can walk around on your tile, you'll want to go to Tile Group, click on one of the tile groups, say A2, for example, and this looks like the grass piece that I was using. And you can see on the right here, this specific tile is set to can pass. But if I go to A5 and click on, say, this one, or this one, yeah, this one, you can't walk here because it's part of the cliff. All right, and the last thing that I wanted to show you is some of the maps will have tiles that is a really, really big image. And so it takes up more than one tile for the one image. So if I go to one of these existing maps, like this Nomad Village, for example, and go to C, you'll see there's these big buildings. When you go to add this, just make sure your mouse cursor is in the upper left corner of where you want the image to start. Notice when I just clicked here, it went to the lower right. To undo it, just press Control Z. And I'll just do another one, just as another example. All right, and that's the end of this tutorial.